All right, we're going to try this again. Good evening and welcome to everyone joining us here today. My name is Shayla Favor and I serve as the chair of City Council's Housing Committee, and I'd like to officially call this hearing to order. Tonight, the Housing Committee is hosting this meeting to discuss 6 community reinvestment areas, or CRA ordinances. The first ordinance is a technical cleanup of language to Chapter 4565 of the Columbus City Code. And then we have 3 CRA amendments in the Southeast CRA, Far South CRA, and the West Broad CRA. Finally, we have 2 proposed CRA creations, Crosswood CRA and West Scioto CRA. Before we start, I think it's important for us to level set just a bit to ensure that we all have an understanding of the terms that you will hear throughout the hearing this evening. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines and calculates area median income, or AMI, for every region of the country. In Columbus, 100% of the area median income would reflect an individual who makes approximately $57,800 annually and able to pay $1,445 per month for rent without being rent burdened. A person is rent burdened if they are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. A family of 4 bringing in approximately $83,812 annually, paying around $2,100 per month for rent and utilities, would also be included in the 100% of the AMI category. An individual making $47,000 annually and able to pay $1,200 per month without being rent burdened would fall into the 80% AMI category. And a family of 4 would be bringing in approximately $67,000 annually, paying around $1,700 per month for rent and utilities without being rent burdened. And individuals making $35,000 annually and able to pay $880 per month without being rent burdened would fall into the 60% AMI category. And a family of 4 would be bringing in approximately $50,000 annually, paying around $1,200 per month for rent and utilities without being rent burdened. I think it's incredibly important for us to start off in that fashion because without a shadow of a doubt, one of the first questions that I hear as the housing chair, and I'm certain that the Director of Development and our Director of Housing Strategies would also acknowledge that there is some inconsistencies around what the definition of affordable housing actually is. And so my team wants to make sure that any conversation that we enter into, we're all working off of the same information. So hopefully that is helpful to the listening audience. This evening, we will hear from Assistant Director Aaron Prosser, as well as the developers from each project to discuss their respective projects associated with the proposed CRA ordinances. With that, I would like to now turn it over to our Director of Development, Director Stevens, for some initial remarks.
Good evening, Chair Favor. Thank you for hosting this hearing tonight. As we work and before I get into that, I want to thank you for the level setting on the information around area median income. I think that is really important, how we talk about that and for people to understand that. But as we work to implement the city's housing strategy, the tools around the community reinvestment area is an incentive that really helps accomplish our goals to build more units, as well as to build more inclusive units and have mixed income neighborhoods and communities. So we feel these are important tools. These are projects that are going to deliver multiple units in our community that will be accessible to individuals throughout our community. So thank you again for hosting the hearing, and I'm happy to turn it over to my colleague, Erin Prosser, and so she can share some of her work.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate the opportunity to come tonight with some proposed updates to our community reinvestment area program and making sure that we are providing the information to you as council considers these updates. I do have a PowerPoint that I can walk through quickly just to give an idea overall of the abatement process, where we are, and what we will be putting forward this evening. So as we think about the updates to the proposed program, I want to step back a little bit and just mention the fact that we are in a housing shortage in Central Ohio and in the city of Columbus. We are adding a lot of new residents to our community because we have attracted jobs and we have opportunities here for folks to come and move into Central Ohio. We have not kept pace to build the housing infrastructure we need to support those families and individuals coming to our community. And that impact is being seen by our most vulnerable and on up through our community. And in response to that, the Columbus Housing Strategy that we announced in June of 2021 is going to focus on a few really key items and looking to how we can change the way we do business in the city to make sure that we're supporting that housing infrastructure. One of the things we want to do at the top is to build the number of housing units we need to support that growing city, to make sure that we have the housing available for families and individuals here in our community today and those that are coming to join us. In addition to building units at all price points and all types of housing, we want to make sure that we are also preserving the existing affordability we have in our community. And that can be our low-income homeowners that have been in our community for a long time and the ability to support them with programs like critical home repair. Certainly the work that council is undertaking around tenant protections and making sure that renters have the support they need to stay housed in our units throughout the city. And finally, we want to make sure that we're including all of our families in the economic growth and the growth of the city. And as we look at the CRA policy, the two really critical places that it can support our work is both in build and include. Oop. Looks like I might be stuck. Thank you. So as we think about the impacts of the housing scarcity on our community, one of the things we know that we see in our neighborhoods is rents rising, especially in places where there is access to opportunity, good jobs, opportunities for good schools. Those are places where we're seeing those individuals and families that have been in those communities priced out, and we're not seeing the ability to insert that affordability through other practices and projects, and the tax abatement becomes a really critical tool to adding that affordability into those communities. It's increasingly expensive to build affordable housing in our community, and I think as we have our developers present this evening, Councilmember Favor, we'll have a couple that are building 100% affordable projects and are in need of this particular tool to help them get those projects across the finish line and make sure that they get built in our city. And so the overall goals of our incentive program, going back to the housing strategy and thinking about build, preserve, invest, and include, we want to make sure that we're incentivizing that residential construction. We want to make sure that we're supporting the development of new units throughout the city. This is an important tool, especially given the increases in cost of labor, cost of lumber, cost of capital these days. These projects are getting increasingly expensive and more challenging to bring into our city. So this is an important tool. We also want to make sure that we're including below market rate units in these higher rent neighborhoods where these projects are going. And the program will talk a little bit about how we've identified 3 different types of markets that these abatements can be utilized in. And when we have those projects going into neighborhoods where the rents are high, this program allows us to include those affordable units, not just less expensive in those neighborhoods, but income restricted and protected. So they're going to families that are in those income levels and making sure that they are protected during the term of that abatement. And then finally, again, just supporting the development of the affordable housing projects that are brought to us through the low-income housing tax program and other opportunities that we have to bring 100% affordable housing projects into the city. Looks like this might have gotten a little bit skewed, but I think just to reinforce, Councilmember Favor, what you mentioned at the beginning, when we talk about affordability, making sure that our families aren't paying more than 30%. That at that point, we have families that struggle to maintain reliable transportation, obtain high-quality childcare, all the other things that our families are dealing with and trying to support their family with. If you are a registered nurse in Central Ohio, the mean wage in our area is $73,270. At that wage, if that registered nurse is supporting a family of 4 on that income, he or she would be in the 80% AMI category. If a construction worker making $50,000 a year in our community is just supporting themselves, they would also be at that 80% level. An administrative assistant, the mean wage in our community is $40,000, just a little bit over $40,000 a year. If that administrative assistant is supporting a family of four, he or she is also in the 60% category. And if you are working in a restaurant here in Central Ohio and making $29,000 on average, and not supporting additional people in your family, you are also at that 60%. And so as we think about those folks in our community and the opportunity for them to live throughout our community, we have the opportunity to utilize our tax abatement program. And when we look at how the tax abatement works, and I think this is a program that has been around, there were pretty significant changes made in 2018. But again, we know that there's a cost to construction. And as we look at the things that go into a new residential project, certainly the cost of land is increasing in our community, the cost to build, and then you have to continue to operate it, right? You need to keep the lights on and you need to mow the lawn, and you have a cost of capital that you're pulling into the project as well. And right now, at times, we don't have enough revenue to make up the costs of the project because of those expenses and because of where that revenue lies. So there's a little bit of a gap. And in order to bring those projects over the line and make sure that they happen, we were able to think about the ability to abate the property taxes for a temporary period of time, just the 15 years, to allow that cost to be removed from the project and allow that revenue to be at a place where we can get residential units into the community. As we look at those things, it is temporary, right? So we have a pre-development taxable value. That doesn't change. As we move towards a project that does receive the tax abatement, that pre-development taxable value is maintained on that project and on that property, and they do continue to pay that value. What is abated is just the improvement. The thing that is built or constructed on that property, the value of that is abated, again, for the period of 15 years. It is not a policy that can be renewed or redone at the end of the 15 years. At the end of the 15 years, the full taxable value goes back onto the tax roll. And that property then is back into the mix. Again, so just that period of 15 years and just the abated value of the new development. And so as I mentioned, for a long time, the tax abatement policy was really meant to just incentivize residential. And in 2018, council asked the question about whether or not there were additional policy objectives that could be realized by the projects and by the program. And this is the update from 2022, but in 2018, we were able to add affordability requirements to the program. So not just incentivizing the residential, but again, bringing those units into those neighborhoods and making sure that they were income restricted and protected and available for our families. And in 2022, we had the opportunity to take a look and see, had things changed in those 3 years? Could we capture additional affordability? And what we found that based on where we were in terms of the cost of construction relative to the revenues that could be realized, is that we could require the developers to either go deeper or wider on the affordability. So what you see are 3 different categories based on a number of market conditions. The top category, the market ready on the far right, is going to be areas where we can capture a good amount of affordability with the use of this tool. And it now is 10% of the units at 60% area median income and 10% at 80% area median income, or 30% of the units at 80% area median income. So again, deeper or wider, the ability to capture more units or a deeper affordability. That is also the case for Ready for Revitalization, as well as a new affordability requirement for Ready for Opportunity, where 10% of the units at 80% AMI and 10% of the units at 100% AMI. And we did want to provide with you some up-to-date numbers of the impact of this policy. And what you're seeing here is the outcomes since 2018. So including the year 2019 all the way through today. So what the program has incentivized in total residential construction is just a little over 6,000 units. And in a city where we are really working to get units into our community, this is a really impactful tool to bring those units on. With the inclusion of affordability in these projects, we were able to incentivize the inclusion of 863 units in those market rate projects. So again, we're looking at those affordable requirements mixed in with a market rate building. Then the other, as we talked about earlier, just the ability to support 100% affordable projects. So Of those units, we had just a little over 1,000 of the 100% affordable units that we were able to realize with the use of the abatement tool. So this evening, you're going to hear about a couple different pieces of the legislation that will be before council. The first piece of legislation is going to be a series of legislative clarifications. As our team has been going through and thinking about the implementation of the policy, things that we wanted to make sure we had a chance to update as we were bringing this forward to you, really making sure that we were either codifying some of the practices that have been ongoing or maybe have been part of the director's rules that really need to be part of the code, or just adding clarification to the implementation of the policy so that there's a lot of clarity around what exactly is required of our development community for use of the abatement. And then the second thing you'll see is, again, the proposed expansions and creations of several CRA, either expansions of boundaries or new creations of new CRAs. There's a lot of factors that we consider, and certainly the ability to just deliver supply is really important, and the ability to include units is really important. But we also look at things like, is the project in an area that really has great access to opportunity for families, but does not have existing affordability? Can our families choose to live in that location without the use of this tool to provide those units? Again, back to, is it an 100% affordable project? And you will hear from two developers that will be bringing those projects as a part of this CRA expansion or creation. And then finally, we've looked at whether or not there's opportunities for underrepresented unit types, right? I think we're all aware that we're lacking on family-sized units in particular, and other opportunities that we might think would advance a policy priority that we could utilize this particular tool for. And so finally, these are the proposed amendments and creations that we have put forward, that we will be putting forward to council. You will hear from developers on projects in each of these, except for the Southeast CRA, which is the map that is on my slide. This is a boundary adjustment to capture recently annexed properties, and just to make sure that those are realigned with the CRA boundaries. The others will have presentations from developers that are proposing projects in the area that need to utilize the CRA in order to bring those projects over the finish line. And so that's an overall picture of the policy and how we use it to advance the housing strategy and address the needs of housing in our community. And then what we are proposing this evening and what we are putting in front of council for consideration. And then, as always, I've included my contact information. If folks have questions that they would like to bring forward, certainly please email me or call me, and I would be happy to address any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much, Ms. Prosser. Just a few questions on my end. You started off just talking a little bit about our growth, and I believe you made a reference to a number of units what we might need, but could you clarify how many housing units do we need to keep pace with the projected growth of Columbus and the region?
Yes, and I think when we think about our region, we add a lot of new job opportunities, and we don't build the housing. And when we look at other cities that have really kept pace with their job creation alongside their housing infrastructure, really you're building about building a house for every 1.5 jobs that you bring into the community. Mm-hmm. In the last decade, we've added 2.5 jobs and only 1 housing unit. So we've been deficit as we've moved forward over these years, and that's put us in a position where we really need to, moving forward, be at a 1-to-1. And so if we think about that in the next decade, we would be looking at really bringing 20 to 22,000 units a year into the region. That doesn't mean into the city of Columbus, but into our region, and making sure that we're delivering that housing so that we continue to have housing available at those different price points, those different opportunities, and in different parts of the region, so we can support those families that live with us now and those that are coming into the community.
And if my memory serves correct, pre-COVID, we were building around 11,000 units per year, and we needed to be at 18 at that time, right?
Yeah.
So now with our projected growth, we need to be at the 22 to 24-ish mark.
The projected growth, along with the underbuilding that's happened in the last decade, we continue to need to increase the pace in order to make up for that lost ground as well.
I think another question that comes up a lot is, well, why can't you just build affordable? So just a clarifying question, does it does it cost the same to build a market rate project and affordable project?
Yes, I think that's a really important point. As we bring affordable housing into the community, it really is structurally and functionally the same as market rate housing. The difference is that we're able to make sure that there are families in those units that can afford to be there, and the rents are according to their income levels, and again, not exceeding that 30% of their household income. And when we build these new units, the expenses of land and of labor and lumber and all those things are just the same for our affordable housing developers as our market rate developers. The market rate developers can pay for that cost of construction through rents, but as we want to make sure that we have rents commensurate with some of our other income levels, we have to be part of that project, and the opportunity to put in both our dollars as well as partner dollars from the state and federal government into these projects, because the cost of construction remains the same. And it really is about making sure that we can deliver units at a price point that meets some of the needs of our community. And I think even past the construction, even the operating, they have those tax bills, same as our market rate. Our developers, they have to mow the same lawns. All of those costs of operating as well are on those projects too.
So this is the point where I just would take the opportunity to thank the listening audience and all of the voters of Columbus for helping to pass the bond last November, the $200 million bond, because this is how we help build out the capital stack that supports affordable housing in our community. Without that, there'd be no way to fill in that gap funding with just purely federal funding, right?
Correct.
We need these additional dollars. And so we've been talking about what that plan to utilize those $200 million looks like over the next few years or so. Do you want to just touch briefly on that?
Certainly, and I think that's a really important part of how we can get some of these projects across the finish line, and really utilizing all the tools in our toolbox and the ability that the voters have given us to support these projects is really important. And so we've looked at, of the 200 million, using 80 million of those dollars to support these 100% 100% affordable rental projects, making sure that we have those opportunities throughout our city. We'll have $50 million that will be there to support affordable home ownership, because it's just as critical that affordability just isn't about the rental market, but making sure that wealth building is also available to all our residents. We'll be putting $40 million towards the preservation of existing affordability, and really leaning into the fact that we have this really unique opportunity in Central Ohio, because we're thinking about our housing pressures early, that we have the ability to lock down some of that existing affordability and not let it go as the market changes. And then finally, dedicating $30 million specifically to permanent supportive housing, and making sure that we are allowing for housing of our most vulnerable, and really making that sure that's a priority, and making sure that that's something that we bring out of that $200 million.
Do you think that incentive programs are critical to the inclusion of below market rate units?
Yes. And especially in the areas where we're seeing the new construction happen and we're seeing those apartments getting built, but for the abatement, we don't have a tool that allows us to include that affordability. And as we utilize this tool and the continued work that we get to do with council and making sure that it's constantly getting as much of that affordability and value out of that abatement as possible is really important. Our market is changing rapidly. And we don't have another tool that allows us to require those affordable units in our buildings, but for the tax abatement, which makes it a really important tool to add some of that economic diversity to our neighborhoods, to not allow the market to be the sole determiner of whether or not somebody can afford to live near some of the opportunity areas and job centers, making sure that we have those opportunities spread throughout the city.
And you had a really great slide that captured how the abatement actually works. And I think when folks hear abatement, they're thinking no taxes at all, right, handout. But that's not the case. You are paying taxes on the unimproved part of the project. Is that correct?
Correct, and the only abatement is on your investment that you make in that property. And that's really the exchange that we're making, is we are incenting you to make that investment, and we're going to forego those taxes just for that period of time on just the improvement. The original tax bill remains, you're still responsible for that as if the investment didn't happen, but at that end of the 15 years, we've now had an investment been made, and now it's fully on the tax bill, and it is part of that residential supply that we'll need as we continue to grow.
So to that point, How does the city ensure that the developer is keeping up with the requirements? How do we know that the property is in compliance?
I think that's a fantastic question. We have a process for compliance. If you want to remain keeping that abatement on your property during those 15 years, you have to submit documentation that shows that those units are being rented at those income levels to people who are earning those incomes. And that continues over the course of the 15 years. They have to continue to provide that documentation so that we can track over the course of that abatement that they've made that commitment and kept that commitment.
What about residents, existing residents? Are they able to take a part of this tax abatement revised policy as well?
And I think that was a really important change that council was able to make in the 2022 update, in that we looked at the owner-occupied units, and they had previously been part of that incentive, the opportunity to have abatement on owner-occupied new construction. And that was really the new residents that were coming into our neighborhood. We wanted to recognize that the existing residents in our community, they may have a place where they would invest in their home, and if they earn below 120% of the area median income, they could capture that abatement value on, again, that improvement and that investment they make, or if they make that in conjunction with a partner in their community, that they're not going to see that tax bill increase for that period of 15 years. If you are a new resident that's buying a newly constructed home and your income is above that 120% area median income, you are not eligible for the abatement since the 2022 updates. And that was a really critical component of updating the policy in 2022 that I think really reflected where we are in some of the neighborhoods and communities and what they're experiencing.
You also had another slide up that showed I believe, the 5 areas that we will be discussing this evening. How are the sites selected?
And this is as we think about the way the city structures our CRA policy. And I think I didn't have a map up this time, but there are specific geographies that we've identified that can utilize the abatement. And again, as we look at these projects that come into our community and the proposals from the developers that you'll hear from this evening, we know that there are some opportunities to deliver on those policy objectives, but they are not currently within an existing CRA. And so they have that proposal, they bring it to the Department of Development, and we are able to measure if it aligns with some of the policy objectives, building supply, including affordability in really critical neighborhoods, bringing 100% affordable projects into our city. As we look at those things, we are able to bring you and bring to council what we think is aligned with the goals of the program and would advance some of the needs that we have around housing. And so as we look at these, again, 4 of them have developers that will present the projects that they've proposed in these areas to allow for either the creation or amendment of a CRA. And then the Southeast CRA is one, again, that we had parcels that were annexed into the city, and then we are just realigning those boundaries to capture those annexed properties into Southeast.
And then, very quickly, how are the boundaries defined?
As we look at the boundaries for our CRA areas, they are based on our census tracts. And we do look at, especially now as we think about moving forward and adding either amendments or new creation, that they are commensurate with those census tracts. It also allows us to align it with those 3 categories: the market ready, the ready for revitalization, and ready for opportunity. The data that we use to support those designations are by census tract, so it does allow us to align those 2 things.
On slide 12, you shared some of the legislative clarification updates to the code. Can you share what this change will mean and any examples of before and now after the proposed change?
Absolutely. So again, as we look at the program, we had the opportunity to update it in 2022 and some of those terms that we want to make sure we were capturing additional affordability. As we went through the legislation, our team was really diligent as we think about the implementation of the program and really looked at several areas. As you can see on this slide, we did look at the ways in which we identify what's required for affordable housing. And one of the things that you see is just a really explicit part of the code that won't allow units to be congregated in one area of a building or of a development. We don't want to see the circumstance where all the affordable units are really far away from the amenities that are in a building. We don't want to see the case where they are kind of in a building that is the least desirable of the project, right? We want to make sure that, again, not just across unit types, but making sure that they're across the building as well. It's something that we think in spirit is part of the program, but was not something that was explicitly in the code. And then we had things like the issue around if there's a unit that, in the case of, I think force majeure is the technical term, right? Something dramatic happens, and we have a proposal that has been granted an abatement, and for some reason they can't build the total number of units that they were anticipating, and so they have an obligation then for those 20% of the total units. If there is something that the director identifies as being kind of unforeseen, then we have the ability to adjust that requirement to meet their new unit count. So if they were going to build 100, but they only got 50 built, if it is for good reason, then we want to make sure that we can make that adjustment for that developer and make sure those units do get built and come online. So some cleanups in that sense. And again, some things that were just part of the normal course of implementing the policy that, as we had conversations with the city attorney's office, were better to put inside the code and make sure that it was more explicit than just practice.
Wonderful. And then, Director, just a question for you, just around the administration's priorities. We had a pretty interesting conversation last night at City Council, specifically in the zoning portion of the evening, around whether we are building too many rental units in our community, and that perhaps we are building, we've got enough. And so, question being, do we have enough? And then, is it an and/or? Can we also focus on home ownership opportunities while also continuing to build sufficient rental units for existing residents and those who are coming into the city?
Thank you, Chair Favor. To answer your question, no, we do not have enough rental units, and we need to continue to encourage the construction and the development of more rental units. We also need to encourage single-family home ownership. And Aaron touched on it as part of our $200 million and where we're prioritizing those affordable housing dollars. We want to make sure we are investing in home ownership as well as preserving existing affordability, whether you're renting or you own. What we're seeing is, and we've talked about this in public hearings and one-on-one, we also need to focus on our economic development efforts, and those jobs we're looking to attract need to be higher wage jobs too. So individuals have the means, if they want to have single-family home ownership, they can afford to buy that and not be priced out. Right now, the market dictates to a certain extent where it makes sense to invest in multifamily and where it makes sense to invest in single family. But it's important that we have a mix of both, and we need to increase the number of both single family and multifamily units.
Thank you very much for that. All right, next we will have the developers from each project to discuss their respective projects associated with the proposed CRA ordinances. First up, we will have Mr. Jordan Henderson, Director of Housing with Community Development for All People, to discuss the development associated with the proposed Far South CRA amendment. Mr. Henderson, welcome back to Council.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor, and thank you for convening this important discussion. So as you said, my name is Jordan Henderson. I serve as Director of Housing with Community Development for All People, and I'd like to discuss briefly our project with the NRP Group, which is headquartered in Cleveland, called the Daring Family Apartments. Briefly, the NRP Group has a long history of developing high-quality housing. They own and operate more than 27,000 units across several states. They've been in business for approximately 30 years. And this would be our fifth venture with the NRP Group. Community Development for All People is a faith-based CDC headquartered on the south side of Columbus, and we have been developing affordable housing through a variety of partnerships and financing models since 2007. Okay, just to orient us a little bit, The site is located on the south side of Columbus and within the far south area commission boundaries. It's got immediate access to Interstate 71 and 270. Just to reference, the site is highlighted with the yellow star there. The majority of the site does have frontage on South High Street, so on a major transit corridor, and it's less than 3 miles from some major employment centers, principally the downtown area and Nationwide Children's Hospital. It provides excellent connectivity to grocery stores, shopping centers, and jobs. And it's an important development, we feel, to the south side, which is seeing some dramatic growth through some recently announced projects. So on this slide, you can see the makings of a site plan. The site consists of 2 different parcels. The southern parcel is currently vacant land, and the northern parcel consists of a restaurant, which is to be demolished. The total unit count is 245. The total project cost is roughly $78 million. And 15% of the units will be 1-bedrooms, 30% will be 2 bedrooms, 40% 3, and 15% 4 bedrooms. We have a partnership with Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority to provide 25 project-based vouchers so that we're able to serve those who are considered extremely low income, so those households earning no more than 30% of area median income. And the overall project will serve, it's 100% affordable and will serve people earning between 30 and 80% of area median income with a rent range of roughly $500 to $1,800 per month. The project will also provide a host of amenities, principally 6,000 square feet of commercial space, which is slated to be occupied by Sprout 5, which will provide high-quality early childhood education for the residents primarily and also to the broader community. The project consists of 3 4-story buildings, surface parking. Some of the amenities will also include a fitness center, a community room, on-site leasing office, playground. And as I said, the NRP Group is the lead developer, and Community Development for All People will be their nonprofit co-developer. So just want to highlight some of the sources of funds that have been critical to making the development of this project possible. Principally, the Ohio Housing Finance Agency allocated $4.5 million in bond gap financing. The City of Columbus has committed $2 million to this project, and Franklin County has committed $1.35 million to this project. All of these sources are really important to making the development possible, and the tax abatement is really going to be critical to helping the project operate in a way that's healthy for the long term. And last but not least, just wanted to provide just a little bit of a development timeline. Many of the funding necessary to make the project viable was solidified in the latter part of 2022, November, December of 2022. We are hopeful that the CRA approval or the amendments will take place this year, finalizing zoning in July of this year, and with the goal of securing building permits in September and ultimately starting construction in November of this year. Fortunately, all of the sources of funding have been committed, and we look forward to closing and breaking ground on this project, which will take approximately 18 months to construct. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. You mentioned that this is the 5th venture for CD4 with NRP. Where are your other projects located?
Great question. All on the south side. And so our first project was Southern Gateway Homes, which is in the Reeb-Hosack community. Our second project was Parsons Village 1 and then Parsons Village 2, both of which are in close proximity to the Reeb Center along the Parsons corridor. Those provide housing for people who are 55 and older. And our last venture was Career Gateway, which is located on Whittier within walking distance of Nationwide Children's Hospital. That's a unique workforce development project in that workforce development training is happening in the building for residents and the community at large.
And I also truly appreciate the fact that you're offering 1 to 4 bedroom units, which we don't see a lot of in Columbus. Why was that important to you all?
Absolutely. To your point, there is a tremendous shortage of four-bedroom units. We have large families interfacing with us on a regular basis, and they really struggle to find those larger units. And so, given the scale of this project, it provided a unique opportunity to meaningfully embed four-bedroom units that we aren't always able to offer.
There's also a really great range of affordability here. 30 to 80% of the area median income will be supported by this project, with 30% truly being the extremely low income in our community. What considerations have gone into the development to ensure that this population is supported? Wraparound services, things like that.
Excellent question. So principally, being able to serve people at that 30% AMI bracket, it was really made possible by a partnership with Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority. Those project-based vouchers really help to offset the cost of developing and operating those units. Even though we're renting them for significantly less money, the cost to develop and operate them remains the same as the units that we'll rent for $1,800. And additionally, supportive services will be provided on site. That's something that I did not mention in the presentation. We have a partnership and an agreement with the NRP group to have service office that will be staffed to connect people with resources and to address any issues they may have that would ultimately create barriers to maintaining their housing or to help them with any other life goals that they may have.
That's really good to hear. You know, it's not enough to build and make it available for folks. We have to also recognize that some of those individuals are experiencing some hard times, and so they need a bit of a heavier lift. And so it's incredibly noble for you all to recognize that and then put the right folks in place to provide that necessary support. Assistant Director Prosser or Director Stevens, do you all have any additional comments about this project? All right, wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Joe Thomas, Director of Development with Metro Development, associate with the proposed Far West Broad CRA amendment. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Faber. I'm Joe Thomas, like you mentioned, with Metro Development. I've been with Metro Development since 1995. Our company's been in existence in some format since 1964. We've developed predominantly in Central Ohio and mostly in the city of Columbus. Just to give you a little background about our CRA involvement, the last couple of years with the city of Columbus. As of right now, we have 7 developments entered into the CRA. Within the Northeast CRA, we have 4 developments, which equals 1,344 current market rate units, and of those, we have 10% of those are 60% AMI and 10% are 80% AMI. Over in the Southeast CRA, we have 3 other projects, but we also are continuing to add to that area, which will ultimately have 1,488 units just in that area of City of Columbus. And tonight, we're bringing forward a particular project called Parkside Village and hope to add it to the Far West Broad Street CRA. This development is located at the corner of Hall and Galloway Road, which, like I mentioned earlier, is part of or next to the Far West Broad Street CRA currently. So extending this property, which is adjacent to the existing, would include 552 units in the CRA, of which will have a balance of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartments. So if you can see in this chart right here, we'll have 28 in the 1-bedroom. Again, 14 of those are at 60% AMI, and 14 are at 80% AMI. And then you jump over to the 2-bedroom units, we'll have a total of 104, of which 36 are in the 80% AMI, and then 36 are in the vice versa, 60% AMI. Then we also include the 3 bedrooms as well. 6 of those are in the 60%, and 6 of them are in 80%. So of the 552 units, we'll have a mixture of 60 and 80% AMI units of a total of 112 units of those 552. This is a site plan of the community itself. Within the site plan, we'll have 2 community centers that are 4,500 square foot each. We have numerous walking trails throughout the entire community. We have dog parks, and we also have area amenities such as outdoor grill areas, outdoor play areas, outdoor gathering areas. And like I mentioned earlier, this is at the corner of Hall and Galloway Road. These improvements will consist of 22 3-story breezeway-style walk-up buildings, again totaling 552 units. The clubhouse are outfitted with large areas of flat-screen TVs, coffee bars, fitness centers. We have 2 expansive pools with outdoor built-in grilling areas, community gardens, as I mentioned earlier, 2 dog parks. And this development also includes 144 detached garages. Of the interior of the units, each of them have a living area, kitchen, and laundry hookups. The units have been carefully designed with ample closet and storage space. Floors in the bedrooms and living rooms are carpeted. The floors in the kitchen, bath, and foyers will have vinyl plank, simulated wood flooring. Windows will be covered with faux blinds, and the ceiling height of these units are 9 foot, and all the wall cabinets are 42-inch in size. We hope to start construction in November of 2023 and be completed in 2026. So there'll be a roughly 36-month time frame for completing 552 apartments. Again, the amenities of the clubhouse, as I mentioned earlier, there's 2 clubhouses on this site, 4,500 square feet in size. We have a cafe, movie theater, billiards, and a lounge room with a fireplace and a fitness center. Again, the exterior amenities of the community center itself. We have a pool with a large sun deck, built-in gas grills, patio with outdoor fire pit, and then outside of those areas, we have walking paths, dog parks, and community garden. We have a number of justifications for this particular area. One in particular is the area is served by a numerous number of jobs, and we also have close access to grocery stores and other amenities that the neighbors find most interesting. So to summarize, we have, again, 552 units. Of those are 112 affordable units, 56 in the 10% AMI, and 56 in the 80% AMI. And the number of area employers are also attracted to this community. Within 10 miles, we have large employers such as the Wexner Medical Center, which has 27,000 employees, Nationwide, which has 17,000, Children's Hospital, 10,000, name a few. And then just within the 5-mile area, we have UPS, which has 1,800 employees. We have Big Lots, which has roughly 1,500 employees. We have Teleperformance, which has another 1,300. So there's numerous jobs that are available in close proximity to this CRA area to be added. And just to summarize, I wonder if you had any questions for us this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Actually, if you could go back to your bed breakdown. And really, I'm going to toss this over to, because we didn't call this out to Director Prosser or Assistant Director Prosser or Director Stevens, because I think this is one of the important amendments to the CRA policy when we think about how the units are to be broke up, right? So if we're talking about 20% at a certain AMI level, can they all be 1-bedrooms and then the rest be, 3 bedrooms at market rate? Like how that works out. And so Mr. Thomas did a really great job of breaking down what this project is going to look like, but just wanted to provide an opportunity for you all to highlight that really great feature.
Yes, that was not something that we highlighted this time, but in 2022, during that update process, having lived with the policy for the last 3 years, one of the things that wasn't built into the code requirements was that the unit mix be commensurate with the overall mix. So we can't have a circumstance now that your affordable units are all studios and the remainder of the units are all market rate, but they have to be commensurate. So if you have those breakdowns of percentages of those different unit types, you also have to provide that affordability across those different unit types. And again, thinking about the family-sized units that are part of this project and the project that Mr. Henderson mentioned, that's that's a really important part of making sure that the policy objectives are being met. And that we're providing that affordability for lots of different types of families, not just for those interested in studios or one bedrooms.
Yes, yes, thank you very much. And Mr. Thomas, just one more time, if you don't mind, that is really small print. Just to, just to call out what that mix looks like again.
Again, on our side of the total 552 apartments, I apologize. We have 14 of the 60% AMI and 14, and this is under the one-bedroom column, and 14 of the 80%. And then of the two-bedroom, we have 36 of the 60% and 36 of the 80%. In the diversity of the three-bedroom, we have 6 units under the 60% and 6 units under the 80%.
Wonderful. And then just given the fact that you all have elected to serve our residents that fall within that 60% of the area median income, what considerations have gone into the development to ensure that this population is supported, if need be?
Well, you know, from a standpoint of our developments, we always try to strive to make sure that the residents are well amenitized. And as we mentioned earlier, not to have the disparity of the units just singled out into a certain area of the community. We try to equally spread them out through the entire community itself. So if you're a 60% AMI, if you're 80% AMI, these units will all be equally spread across the units, across the community, across the entire site. So there's not one building set up for these particular type of set-offs. There's going to be, every building will have equal number of units that are in the 60 and 80% AMI.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mike Mayhew, Vice President of Investments with Champion Development, associated with the proposed Crosswood CRA creation.
I am not Mike Mayhew, but
You're not.
Mike is joining us back here. So my name is Chris McGill. I'm the Managing Director of Vista Site Selection. We're a national site selection firm that is based here in Columbus, Ohio. We help companies choose optimal sites for development. I'm joined by, as you know, Mike Mayhew with Champion Real Estate, Brian Hoare with Champion Real Estate, and this youngster over here is the former Mayor Michael Coleman. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 400 East Campus View Boulevard. That is the project in question today. It's a redevelopment of a 142,000 square foot single-story building that has become obsolete in the office market, and we've got some information we can share related to that. Originally built to suit for opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, since it has had to incur heavy maintenance costs and was vacated in October of 2022 as it no longer met the opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities needs. In a nutshell, the property no longer represents the highest and best use of the parcel. If you look at the area where it resides, it's sitting at about a 35% office vacancy rate. If you just look at activity over the last year, the area's actually lost 40,000 square feet of office space. So we're talking about getting the recent rezoning to multifamily was very important for this project. A little bit about the project itself: 396 total units, 78 affordable units, split 39 at 60% AMI and 39 and 80% AMI for just the two bedrooms. So this is all 1 and 2 bedroom units. You can see the breakdown here. This is the site plan. So I'm going to spend the next few slides talking about characteristics of the census tract and why it's most appropriate for this type of development. First and foremost, it provides 78 affordable units, which you just heard. Second, provides affordable unit options to populations facing employment challenges, such as persons with a disability and veterans. It provides housing that is affordable to area workers. I will elaborate more on this here in a second. And then additional characteristics. It complements nearby commercial and jobs. It complements current market activity. It's a redevelopment of a non-competitive building. It provides affordable units to a site with strong, unique transit access. And it provides affordable units to an area with availability of high-speed broadband with provider choice. And by provider, I mean internet provider. Okay, so we're going to talk about two things primarily. One, the need for 60% AMI, and two, access to opportunity, which the census tract provides. First, the census tract we're talking about today has experienced rapid housing unit growth. Unfortunately, it's also experienced rapid growth in median rent. That growth over the past 5 years has been 20.8%, exceeding household income growth in the same area by almost 12%. As a result, this area is becoming increasingly unaffordable. This next slide is what I would call the 60% AMI rental need here in the city of Columbus. The map on your left depicts tracts with 25% or less of all one-bedroom units in the tract that are affordable at 60% AMI. This tract's average is 24%, so only 24% of the one-bedroom units are affordable to 60%. That significantly trails the county average of 62%. Similarly, the map on your right is the two-bedroom unit depiction, in which only 2.3% of two-bedroom units are affordable at 60%, significantly, again, trailing the county average of 37.8%. So the purple is the exclusive 60% AMI need picture of the city of Columbus. Now we're going to talk about access to opportunity. Transit is a very important component for units with affordability, as we all know. One of the things that what you're looking at here is a map of CODA transit routes. Layered upon that, you can see a lot of those 60% AMI tracks that were highlighted in purple on the previous slide, just depicted here with circles. Our site, or our tract, is the red circle. So you can see of all the areas that have the highest need for 60% AMI units, we are adequately served, by we I mean our tract, with transit. And you can see this kind of pop-out picture on the top left corner. Again, very hard to see, but these little dots represent where all the bus stops are. This is a very long, elaborate way of saying this tract is adequately served with transit. Single-parent costs. So you're probably wondering why we're singling out single-parent costs here in this slide. Columbus is of all the top 20 largest cities in the country, Columbus is there's only one other city that has a higher concentration of single-parent households than the city of Columbus, and that's Philadelphia. Overall, in all cities, Columbus has the 8th largest concentration of single-parent households. So when we focus on single parents, I want you to look at both the map on the left and the map on the right. The map on the left represents tracts that are affordable from just a transportation perspective. The map on the right adds housing costs to that metric. So very rarely do you see a tract that is purple on the left remain purple on the right, which basically means a once affordable tract becomes unaffordable when you add housing costs to that tract. From a demographics perspective, we're zeroing in on households with people with at least one disability, growth in those households, and growth in veteran population. As you can see, our tract is in unique company in both of these areas. This is broadband access. So what this basically shows is that this tract is adequately served with high-speed broadband. The dark purple is right across the street from our tract, making it very easy to tap into the highest of internet speeds in the city. Columbus overall is very adequately served with broadband. There are some pockets of areas that are underserved. Probably more important is the number of provider choices. So 3 providers basically represents that the households can choose providers in case one provider is driving up the cost. As we all know, broadband is a major component for access to job opportunities, access to entrepreneurship, and many other things. Now we're going to talk about jobs. This is a synopsis of the job market in the area by overarching occupational categories and whether that category is largely a 60% or 80% AMI occupation. As you can see, the tri-zip code area, which is the larger job market that surrounds the census tract we are discussing today, is highly concentrated of office and administrative support, food preparation. You can see about 15,000 jobs in just those two categories. Of the food prep jobs, about half of them are first-line supervisors, which essentially is more adequate to about, on the high end of the 60%. And then you have cooks, which are on the low end of the 60% AMI spectrum. Similarly, you have a number of other occupations that are in the area that could benefit by having a nearby housing development. I've also boxed out the first two occupational categories. These are two occupations where the tract significantly exceeds the city average of this job type. So basically, this area is a hotbed for these two occupational types. One other call-out box in the top right corner. Currently, 43% of renters in this tract are paying 30% or more of their income towards rent. So that is all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. You outlined that this project will provide, was it 78 affordable units with affordable unit low supply? And you talked about the jobs and the resources. Did we hit childcare and other supportive services that will be available to residents?
Of all the data we looked at, we didn't map nearby childcare facilities. Certainly something we'd be happy to do if it provides additional context. I will say that, I can let the developer elaborate on some of the other components of the development, but the development itself will have a lot of the amenities that you were seeing in the last presentation. However, what sticks out to me is there is a co-working space, so where they have what, a traditional business center, think of it as much more elaborate with free Wi-Fi, free Starbucks. The reason I bring that up in this context is you can work from this site much more efficiently, and there's more of a campus to perform your job in case you're unable to access childcare in the event it weren't available.
And, this is not the first time we've had champions here down at City Hall. And if my memory does, actually, it's the wrong one. I'm right. I am right. Why is there a focus on 60%? Why is that do you have that answer?
I can take the first stab at this, and if the developer wants to chime in, I'd certainly welcome them to come up, but the area needs it, and Champion is a good steward of the community. We have a number of jobs in the area that could benefit by being closer to this location. So similarly to the company's last experience in developing 60% and 80% AMI, it helps them solve a community need.
And I ask that question because, as have said a few times this evening, that really is the sweet spot for where we're at right now as it relates to getting as much as we can out of the incentive policy and also recognizing where folks are right now, where is the greatest need as it relates to housing. And as the department has laid out very clearly, it costs just the same to build market rate as it does to do an affordable project. And so I, for one, have always been a champion of champion. See what I did there? Just because the entire project and all the ones that have come before us have really prioritized that affordability in its projects. Director, do you have any additional remarks or questions here?
Thank you, Chair Favor. I would just ask, as we worked with the development team on the transitioning of the office space to housing, we really pushed back because we know the importance of income tax revenue to the city. But the case and the data is compelling as why this will serve not only a job center, but those individuals working in the job center who might not have access to those amenities in this location. So we thought it was a good mix and are supportive of this.
Absolutely. And then if you could just call out once again what the unit mix was?
Yeah, I will actually put up the slide for convenience. So we have, of the 396 units, you can see the one bedroom and two bedroom. There are no three bedrooms as part of this development. Basically, when you take the percentages, we've got 78 affordable and then 39%, 39 units at two-bedroom units at 60% AMI and 39 units at 80% AMI.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. And last, but certainly not least, we have Carolyn Kimmel, Development Director with Kittle Property Group, to discuss the proposed West Iota CRA creation. Welcome back to council.
Hi, thank you. Let's see. Oh, perfect. Okay. So this is the our West Fork apartment community, which is 60% AMI, 100% of the units at 60% AMI workforce housing. So just a quick summary of Kittle Property Group. We have over 150 properties in 18 states. And one thing I wanted to call out is in Columbus, utilizing the CRA program, we've created 784 units of housing ranging from 50 to 70% AMI. So that's not a stat on here, but a stat I thought was worth mentioning. The site in question is located at Wilson Road and Twin Creeks Drive, and it's kind of hidden a little bit, pushed back off of Wilson Road next to another apartment complex with quite a lot of topography and trees. Twin Creeks should really be called like Four Creeks because there's a lot of wet area there towards the back of the site. So in response to that, this is how we've laid out the site. It is kind of condensed to the, to the west side of the parcel, with a majority of the natural landscape on the east side of the parcel being left alone or used for detention. Development amenities, we have a fitness center, a clubhouse with a leasing office, a game room, cyber cafe, craft and activity room, a dog park, a playground, and an outdoor entertainment area. And then we also have garages and storage available for additional rent. So the unit breakdown, we have 216 units, all at 60%, that magical 60% AMI level. And of that, we have 72 one-bedrooms, 72 two-bedrooms, and 36 three-bedrooms and 36 four-bedroom apartments, which I'm really excited about. That was a recent change. We created a new building type that's kind of outside of our normal spec to create more 3 and 4 bedrooms in this location. We are also the owner and operator of Whispering Creek Apartments, which is nearby, and our 3 and 4 bedroom units there are always completely full. So this was kind of 2s, 3s, and 4s there rent the best. So this was kind of our response to that, is hopefully being able to serve additional families at the 60% AMI level. So a lot of this was already discussed earlier, but there is very strong demand for West Fork. We use Voight Strategic Insights based here in Columbus to do our independent market study. And they kind of draw their PMA, their primary market area, based off of drive time and some other factors. But there are 6 affordable housing communities currently in the PMA, and 5 of the 6 are 100% occupied with a wait list. The additional 6th property actually had a fire earlier this year that took the units down, so that's why it's not fully occupied, because the units aren't available, but every unit that is habitable is rented. So that obviously speaks to the demand in that area. So current vacancy rate is 2.6%, and those fire units are what accounts for that. So this was also, I think, talked about earlier, but I don't think we got this stat, so I thought I would go over it. So by 2025, there will only be 823, if we stay on the same track, 823 affordable units available in the PMA for the 5,691 households that need them. So currently, we're only producing enough affordable units to serve 14.5% of the population. So I think really what we see here is a lot of pent-up demand. That's the easiest way to look at it. And in the next 5 years, or next 3 years, according to this, there'll be additional pent-up demand if more units are not produced. I think this is actually an old presentation. But one thing I wanted to touch on too that's outside of the presentation itself is I think it was mentioned earlier, is like what happens when we have a tax abatement, like what is the benefit that is created by having a tax abatement. So it costs basically the same, if not more, money per unit to build an affordable unit. And that's because, especially with what Kittle Property Group does in our partnership with Ohio Housing, with OFA, is that we have really strict requirements that go along with the construction. So very strict construction standards, expanded green standards, all Energy Star appliances, et cetera. And that is very expensive, especially right now. We just had a presentation at our home office this morning that we covered. You know, there's been a 30% increase in lumber costs. There's been a 20% increase in the cost of cabinets. So all of these items are adding up. And so in order to create affordable units, we have to have a way to make up for those expenses. So when we have a development that has a CRA and we lower our property tax payment, we are lowering our monthly expenses. So that means we can put more money towards paying our mortgage because we have fewer expenses. And that means we're able to take on more debt. It doesn't mean that the developer is taking that money and putting it back into their pocket. What it's actually doing is allowing us to continue to build affordable units because we can take on a larger size mortgage, therefore we can take on additional units. So I think that's something important. Also love the AMI coverage that you did. I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. So I think it's really important to have those conversations.
Yeah, and to your point there, allowing you, it gives you a lot more latitude to build more units, right? And so if you've got a little bit more flexibility, if you will, as it relates to the dollars you have to play with, you can build more units, which brings the cost of cabinets down tremendously, or the mass cost of however it's going to take.
Right. I mean, you look at it and we build the same clubhouse, whether we have 200 units or 300 units.
Right.
It's our standard 4,500 square foot clubhouse. So if you're splitting that over more units, it's more cost effective to continue to build those amenities and be able to offer those for
Yeah.
residents. So again, that's really important.
Absolutely. And you are no stranger to city council as well. Why has it been a priority for you all to focus on this specific AMI category?
So for us, it's a little bit more technical and a little bit less of a story, but other than the fact that we've seen really high demand in this AMI, I think, so we use rental housing tax credits, 4% rental housing tax credits and tax exempt bonds from OFA. And the 60%, our options are kind of 60% AMI or having a range using income averaging, which is like an example of the 30 to 80 range that we saw earlier. So the 60% AMI is kind of the standard for those 4% bond and tax credit transactions, and you can change it if you want to, but with the 60% units, it just operates the best through OFA's processes. But obviously, as we're seeing, we have all 60% units at Whispering Creek, and it's 100% full. So that tells us that there's still additional demand for those units. So I think it's kind of twofold.
Yeah, and you all have always been really good at providing connections to wraparound services, supportive services as needed. This project will have that as well.
Yes, that's correct. We don't have anything signed with Homeport yet, but I just met with them 2 months ago to talk about what's, getting things started at Darby Crossing as we're getting ready to turn our units, getting, closer to turning our units there. And I mentioned that we were having another project come down the line, and they were excited about continuing our partnership. So unless something dramatic has changed in the last 8 weeks, I would imagine that we'll be partnering with Homeport again for services, which is exciting.
And I really do appreciate you acknowledging that, building an affordable development costs the same, if not more, than a market rate because of the additional requirements that are mandated from the Fed or the state or what have you. And that should bring, the word affordable housing is so triggering for a lot of folks. And unfortunately, it automatically makes folks think that we're talking about a certain type of person. And the reality is that we need affordability across the spectrum. And I think what you highlighted today really does bring attention to the fact that this is not affordability of the past. These are amazing units. They look great. And it's just a reality that we need affordability across the spectrum. So I do appreciate you highlighting that. Director Stevens or Ms. Prosser, anything on your end?
Thank you, Chair Favor. I have nothing with regards to this specific project, though, but as we wrap up, I do want to thank you again for hosting this hearing and for our development partners for coming down here and sharing some of the information on their projects. I do want to highlight the fact, though, this tool, this housing abatement tool, is going to help with this ordinances before council. We're going to see 1,409 new units, of which 651 will be affordable. And I think it's really important that we continue to use this tool to see that type of investment. And I also would be remiss if I didn't introduce my colleague who's with us this evening. Jeremy Hutter-Druat is the manager of the Housing Abatement Program. He leads a team that has not only worked to implement what was passed in 2018, but have gotten ready for implementing the 22 update. And they really did a great job in going through the code that was passed and found those administrative improvements or amendments that we're bringing forward. So I want to recognize Jeremy and his team as well. So thank you for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Kimmel, for your presentation tonight and for the great developments you continue to do in the city of Columbus.
Thank you so much. And if I can, I know I'm maybe speaking out of turn at this point, but we are a national developer and we develop in, 16 states at this point. And without a doubt, Ohio and the tools that you all are using specifically here in Columbus are some of the most powerful that I've seen in all of the markets that we work in to create housing that is really needed. So I do want to just kind of commend you all for the work that you're continuing to do. It's so important.
Thank you.
And it's a privilege to be able to work here and be part of it, so.
I need to bottle that up in a commercial. Thank you so much, Ms. Kimmel. And thank you all this evening. Before we wrap up, Director Stevens, thank you for your final remarks. Ms. Prosser, do you have anything, final thoughts on your end?
No, again, just appreciate the opportunity to bring these projects forward and the opportunity to bring more units into the community in these really critical geographic areas, and then also to add that incredible amount of affordability with this tool.
Yeah, it cannot be understated. I did the hard math too, Director. 1,400 units, over 1,400 units, that's exciting. And we have definitely come a long way with this tool. So I do want to extend my appreciation to the department for working alongside the City Council to make the amendments and then to help get these projects online and providing the necessary gap funding if needed to support them along the way. Thank you to you both for being here, and a new team member as well as all of our guests who have presented here today. We appreciate your time as well as the work that has been done to address housing needs in our community. We did not have any speakers tonight, so that will be the end of today's hearing. Additionally, I'd like to thank our team here at City Hall for helping us with our technology and streaming, Mark Carter, as well as the team here at CTV. This will now conclude our hearing. Thank you all for your time. Have a great evening.